Welcome everyone to TYP Art Live Chat. Today my guest is Barry Penter. So Barry is a self-made artist, passionate for art of realism. So Barry, would you like to introduce yourself to our audience and tell us about us, where you are, for how long have you been engaging yourself into this passionate but also very diligent art journey?
Sure. So my name is Barry Penter. I'm present living in Hanoi in Vietnam. I've been here for 6 years now. It's quite a lifestyle that I enjoy here because it gives me the freedom to be myself, to work consistently at my art, and that's a really wonderful situation that I've got here. I thoroughly enjoy being in Hanoi. I live amongst the locals. I don't live amongst other Western areas, and I quite enjoy the experience of living amongst the locals. It's a great time, and it's interesting to see the dynamics that go on in a different society. It's a wonderful situation. For me, it's been since January 2016 when I completed my first drawing.
Prior 6 years now.
Correct, yeah. So in that time, I've put in around about 6,500, nearly 7,000 hours of my art and I can manage to do that because I actually sit down every day at my easel and I work on my drawings pretty well every day of the year. Obviously, life gets in the road and certain things happen and you can't do it every day. Plus, some days I will get 8, 9, 10 hours of effective work in, and other days I'll get 2 or 3 hours of effective work in, depending on the problems that I'm having or the situation I have with the drawing. But in general, I manage to get an average of 5 hours. I mean effective hours. So I don't mean hours sitting in front of an easel. I mean effective hours. I'm very critical of my effective hours because I want to be realistic about the time that I'm spending. So the situation that I had, as I said, starting at that time, 6 years ago, I was in a situation where I was close to retirement and looking to see what I could do. I'd tried lots of different things prior to that. But one day I was out at a local store in Australia and I picked up a set of 6 cheap pencils and I went and had a play with those and played around with shading. And then about a month later I had my first drawing, which was a full-size portrait, 600 by 800 of Michael Hutchence from the band In Excess, which is an Australian band, worldwide famous and so forth. So that was quite interesting to do, and when I actually took it into work and laid it on the table, people would come in and I'd say, "What do you think of this?" And they'd say, "Oh, it's pretty good." And one of the bosses came in and I asked him, "What do you think?" He said, "Oh, great poster." I said, "Not a poster, I drew it." He goes, "No."
I know this feeling, this impression. So for our audience, I invite you to visit Barry Penter's website as well as Instagram account. When you look at those artworks, you're going to be completely amazed because it was a friend who introduced it to me actually, the previous guest from my live chat. And when I first looked at that, I was like, is it a photograph or drawing? Because they are so realistic and so beautiful. I mean, they're black and white photography. And actually, that's a question, I have for you. I know it's such a cliche. That everyone be thinking of that, especially artists think the appearance of the photography. What is special for you, when you try to draw, you spend hours to draw something, make it as much as, resemblance compared to what we see in the real life. Well, at the meantime, you can take a photo. Of course, you can work on the photos, but what are the difference for you? And that's I know it's a cliche question, but why do you think it worth all the hours and days of effort for you to paint into these details, to draw into these details?
Sure, I understand the question. The reality for me is that I've always dealt with black and white. Even when I was working in photography, I always enjoyed black and white photography more than color photography. So that was the first sort of scenario that I've got where black and white is more predominant in my like structure, if you like. So I prefer black and white to colour. I mean, there's colour everywhere, and you can deal with colour in lots of ways, and we see colour every day. But to see something that's black and white and to be being effective in that format and in that medium is quite interesting to me. I'm sure other people possibly don't understand that like or that reality, but I'm sure that they also, when they get taken away by a piece of black and white work, then they can understand it a little bit better. So it's, to me, it's everywhere is colour. I want to be different from that point of view. Insofar as realism is concerned, there's things that interest me about realism. I've always been somebody who looked at people and stared at people. Now, when I'm talking realism, I'm talking figurative realism. I'm not talking realism insofar as landscape is concerned, or pieces of fruit and vegetable put together and so forth.
Yes, still life or,
Correct, yes. So still life doesn't interest me. Scenarios or scenery doesn't interest me a lot. But figurative realism, because of my interest in people and viewing people, that really interests me. Also, I see it as quite a difficult thing that requires a lot of details. And throughout my working life as an automation engineer, I've had to deal with details at many levels. So taking on details is not really that foreign to me. And I've got methods and systems of dealing with that. And I've been able to transfer those methods and systems over to my art, insofar as I consider my first stages to be draftsman-like. So when I'm actually laying up a piece, I will treat it like a draftsman would treat a structured drawing or something like that. And then I can start playing with the shading. For me, there's two parts to drawing. One is proportions, and secondly, there is shading. And the shading, you take those proportions, and that gives you what the subject really looks like. But then you take that shading, and that's when you start bringing it to life. I'm sure you understand this. Most people do. But with that shading, there's so much that you can do. The ability to put layer on layer and slowly build up an image to something that's quite unique. Not necessarily the same as a photograph, but is unique within itself, is what appeals to me, and I thoroughly enjoy that. And I will spend hours working on a small piece just to get that shading to a level that I want. One of the things I like to do is push ahead. So when I'm looking at a piece of white paper, I like to draw in a certain area and then move across onto the next area. And when I've filled in that area, I come back to the first area to try and bring it more alive, because the white distracts me, and it's quite distracting. And I don't see the true values until I get rid of that white in the next area, and then I start working again on the first area, if you like. So every morning I come down here at 9 o'clock into my studio, and the first thing I do is spend half an hour, maybe 2 hours, correcting what I was doing yesterday, fixing what I was doing yesterday, and building it up. And even now, with the progress I've made on my present one, I still go back to the very beginning and just pick something else up. But there's an interesting thing I'd like to point out that applies to people who, to figurative realism and perception of figurative realism. And it goes back to what you said before about taking a photo and stuff like that. It always interests me how it is that people who raise this matter of just taking a photo and putting it up on the wall never ask the same question where it's still life, or never ask the same question when it's scenery. It's always with portraiture and figurative realism that you see those comments. I mean, I might be wrong, there may be places where that is seen, but from my perspective and the way that I have seen it, it seems to be for figurative realism that is the case. Whether it's just a portrait where she head and shoulders portrait, or if it's actually full body or something bigger than that. So it's an interesting observation from my point of view.
Wow. I think it's what usually what amazes me, and I guess your viewers, your followers, is the level of details, because we know behind the amount of work that you put in. And what I find very interesting is, we talked about the heuristics. I did not know this concept, but it's amazing that by practicing like those hours, days of work that you put in, you actually train your brain to look at one's face. I guess now you're looking at my face and you look at those particular muscles that I don't pay attention at all, and you try to capture them. And I think that's how you make your portrait unique. Because when we take a photo, it's different. It's not the same of level details that we pay attention to. And I guess that's, if I will say that, how you catch the soul, because even behind a realistic portrait, right, we're catching the emotion, we're catching the personality. And I think it's really through all these details that you love, that you are used to, always look at that through all of your life, and finally you put them onto the paper. So it's just it's just fantastic to see how much you realized in 6 years. But then I think it's not just from the 6 years; it's all all your life's experience, all the looking that you have accumulated in your mind.
Yes, correct. I find heuristics a very interesting subject. Heuristics are a science unto themselves, which I'll give a little bit of an explanation to. And the explanation that I want to give is unproven, it is untested, it is untrialed, but it's my perception again. And heuristics are known and have been studied, but not in the line along the lines of being used in the area of art or their effect in the area of art. However, my perception is that heuristics have got use in this world, especially in the world of art, especially with realism. And heuristics are a method that the brain uses, or at least methods that the brain uses to take shortcuts in perception and hearing and all the 5 senses. That is to say, if you take the example that if you're driving a car and the majority of your perception is based on the eyes and what the eyes see, when you're driving a car and you're going at a reasonable speed, your eyes are flashing everywhere. They're looking all around, your head turns slightly, but your eyes are basically going everywhere. And the brain is sorting out all those thousands and thousands of, if you like, photographs that are being received in the brain to try and find what's relevant, what's important, insofar as one thing is concerned, namely the safety of the body that the brain is in. So your safety. So it's looking for, plus other points of safety, it's looking for such things as somebody driving too close, is there somebody on the sidewalk going to cross the road, those sorts of things. And all the other stuff that it sees, but has nothing to do with that, it just ignores. But when something happens that you really want to take notice of, your brain switches on into that mode, and it looks very intently for the time that it needs to at that situation. So somebody comes to the side of the road, thinks about taking a step, you notice that, choose to make a correction, and then they stop taking the step, so it goes back to doing something else again. So this is heuristics in motion, if you like. So all the stuff that that is not relevant to you, those are the things that heuristics are cutting out. And there's many examples of heuristics in action. But for me, heuristics are important because if I'm looking at a face and I'm not seeing every part of the face, or I'm not seeing particular things on the face, then that's heuristics as a normal person, as a non-heuristic aware artist, if you like. But now I'm in the situation whereby my view of a face, my view of a person, my view of a photograph is far more intense than ever before. And that's because I wanted to, first of all, I recognise this thing called heuristics. Secondly, I really wanted to take advantage of them and try and train my brain to be aware of them, which is something that I believe I've done, and in that way be able to transport what I'm seeing into my muscles and into my final work. Now, to train the brain to do that is very simple. All you do is you tell the brain, this is what I want. And if it's not giving you what you want, you simply tell the brain, no, that's not what I want. And that's, people say you shouldn't give yourself a hard time, but I don't consider it giving yourself a hard time. It's simply training. You're saying, hang on, no, that's not what I want. See that area there? And I'm talking to the brain. I'm talking to myself. I'm going nuts down here talking to myself. But, you know. But it's basically the case. Exactly.
Yeah, you're like sharpening your side, you know, your side, your view. And I think that's part of the artist works, because sometimes, you know, we have seen so many great masters like Picasso, whatever, and we were like, you know, it's all natural. They got the talent. But I think as a public, we're not often aware. Aside, in addition to the gift, there's a lot of work behind. And I think when they are gifted, they may need a shorter time, or some are pre-gained, like this heuristics that you explain. But what's encouraging is that I think for everyone, you can eventually guide yourself if you want to draw or appreciate the artworks, you can guide yourself into that, or even for daily life. So like you said, it's not being hard with yourself. It's like putting a challenge, and then it open your eyes and open this horizon. That's how I see it, actually. And I think that's why you're so passionate about that.
Yeah, I agree with you. There needs to be a level of passion. There also needs to be that level of experience and time. It's not something that you just suddenly... Actually, I'm wrong. I was going to say it's not something that actually you suddenly master. In fact, I'm just thinking of the works that I've done previously and comparing them to my new work. And after 6,000 odd hours to start my new piece, and there's a huge difference between what I've done previously and what I'm doing on this new piece. And when I was just thinking about that just now, I thought, oh my goodness, there is suddenly a penny drops, or there is suddenly a slot that gets filled, or there's suddenly it's just there in front of you. And I guess I should be amazed by that, because in fact, it is quite an amazing thing when it happens. Looking at my latest work, I really believe that this is my best piece ever. Now, I say that each piece I probably say, that's my best piece, and that's a genuine case of, I think, that I've improved.
Of course, yeah.
But this time, I think I've improved somewhere else, which I'm very happy about, of course.
But talking about, you know, your previous works, I know you did a lot of portraits, but they are also like a way for practice. Actually, there are two works that I really like. The first is Social Atrocity, and I would call it a bit like magic realism, but so it's like this man taking off the mask, and then you see behind the mask there's nothing, but the mask itself is so realistic. It's actually, you know, the face. And what's interesting in this is, I think you're using your techniques, you know, your perfection of techniques to do portraits, but in the end put a setting that is like telling a story or even a moral. I just wonder, you know, what's the inspiration from this story? What you want to tell from this painting? Like, we all hidden behind a mask as society asks us to be, or, well, that's my understanding. But...
Yeah, the actual drawing comes from a reference which has been produced by a friend of mine in Indonesia. So he produced the reference. And this friend of mine has provided me with multiple references in the past. Very, very good photographer, very, very good manipulator of works. My ability to, my decision at this stage is to work with photographers, but I'm also introducing my own work. Now that I'm sort of becoming more proficient, then I'm introducing my own photographs, my own collection of photographs into single references, stuff like that, which is important to me to be able to do. They're very hard to do because you've got to go find the photographs or take the photograph in the first place. But anyway, I'm mastering that slowly. So for starters, you started on the fact that I've been in the situation where I've done quite a few portraits, and that was when I did my first one. I decided that if I wanted to do this thing, then I better start working on learning, first of all, how the face works and try and get that right. So I decided that I'd do 25 portraits for starters. So I went through and I did about 23, 24 before I started hungering for more. Some of those portraits were half body, some were head and shoulders, some were really complex, some were less complex, some included flora and fauna and so forth, things like that. So I started introducing stuff in there. When I found that I was introducing things like flowers and stuff like that, I found I could draw them, which amazed me, but it was a case of I could do it, so that gave me more confidence. But the future for me is really to move away from others' photographs. I don't know how far away that is, but that's the future for me anyway, and start pulling together these works that I really feel emotive about over time.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm hoping to do in the near future. Sorry, you go.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking of another work. It's called Being But Not Living, where you depicted an African in the busy streets in Hanoi, I would assume, because the passengers, I can recognize they're Vietnamese. And what my question is actually, because you depicted the main character, the Africans, in a very realistic manner. However, the background, the street scenes, they are a bit more impressionism, I would say. You catch the major details, but they are not the level of realistic or hyperrealism. Did you do that on purpose, intentionally, to have this contrast between the main character and the surroundings? And is there any message behind, or I don't know, maybe it's an unachieved work and you decide, say, that's done.
It's a little bit less complicated than that. It's an image which captured my imagination. Dejoric is the guy that's in it. He's from the Mississippi in the USA. And he is very high intelligence linguistic specialist here in Hanoi. He's been in Hanoi for quite some time. Very nice guy. And I've caught up with him and met him, and I approached him about using this photograph. And this photograph was simply, he was out doing the tourist thing. And the tourist thing around here, one of the tourist things here is to walk down a local street in which there are these wonderful big paintings that local artists have done of street art. And around Hanoi, there's just so much street art. In my area here, the council, if you like, but the people who are in charge of the area recently consigned about 20 artists to go and do this big mural which covers about a kilometre and a half. So this street art is very popular here, and the authorities are very keen to get their ordinary blank areas filled in like this. So there's a lot of it about, which is great. But this particular picture was him standing in front of this particular drawing, or artwork at least. And I really loved that particular scenario that he had. One of the things with that was to actually take the background, keep it reasonably true to what it is, to what the actual painting is on the wall, but at the same time, as you said, to bring in that almost hyper-realistic effect into, or well, at least realistic effect into the main character. One of the things I really, really love about this particular drawing is the jacket on the guy. I mean, this jacket, when you actually look at it in the drawing, you get close enough and it really looks 3D, which I absolutely love, and I was really impressed that I was able to do that, quite frankly. But it really turned out well. It's a great drawing from my point of view. I've got it on my wall still here, and that's just the way that it is. So it's fun. It's been a good exercise. It's a little bit older now.
I know that you're in your studio, and you mentioned that on your wall you have the different works. Is it possible for you to show us and maybe also review us the work that you are currently working on?
Sure, no problem. So I'm presently working on a piece here which I call 9, and it's called 9 because it has actually got 9 people in it. In fact, the same person 9 times. At the moment, I've got 6 of those forms done. I've got another 3 to do. They'll take me another, oh goodness, another couple of months probably, because this has taken a long time already. But the time is irrelevant. It's what I'm achieving at the moment. My happiness with that jump that I've seemed to have managed to acquire with this particular work. So let me see if I can turn this around and see if we can see what's going on.
Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, I can see it. Wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. And it's huge. It's huge. What's the size of it?
So this one is 1400 millimeters, sorry, 1.4 meters by 0.8. So that's 1400 millimeters by 800 millimeters. So it's quite a decent sized piece, and it's probably it is my biggest piece to date so far. I'm really happy with it so far. It's taken a lot of work. I've got three and a half months into it, and I'm just very happy to spend that time with the results that I'm getting.
Well, I can now I look at the light and shade as we just discussed, and I think how you work on that. So this is completely with pencil with graphite and charcoal, right?
Yeah, it's graphite and a little bit of charcoal, but the charcoal, I don't use the charcoal as a drawing medium, more as a shading medium. And the black is done with Pierre Noir pencils, which is a Contier Paris product. Give a very, very deep black, deep velvety black, which I love, and so do quite a few other artists, graphite artists. So that really provides nice contrast for me, and it works out quite well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's really interesting to see a work in progress, because on the left side, you know, with the white, the border, we can see when you're still doing the drawing of the feet, which is in progress compared to the rest.
Correct.
And on this, how long have you been working on that so far? You told me four months?
Nearly 4 months now, yeah.
Nearly 4 months.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's pretty well most days. I sometimes take a Sunday off, but even then I'll probably spend a couple of hours just cleaning stuff up. And generally at this stage my average is about 5 hours a day, so yeah, 5 hours a day. Sometimes I go through to 10 o'clock at night, but not very often. Generally ready for sleep at that stage, but I can do it. If I have a bad day, if things aren't quite working out correctly, then I may just get brassed off with it and say, hang on, that's enough. So let's not force this, just go away and have a day off or something like that. But yeah, it's fun, this one.
Wow. Wow, it's really fantastic. I think, yeah, I see our audience are leaving comments like, wow, that's impressive. When you actually see that, and I guess when I'm standing in front of that, that's going to be even further impressive because of the size, but just you know, the amount of time that you put in, and it's really great because I remember the early painting, well, the early drawing that you put on your Instagram account, and as you said, every new work you produce, it's the best. So you're really progressing, and even I can see the difference. But yeah.
Correct. I think that my story is mainly one of progress. In progress insofar as learning from other people, to get into the right Facebook groups, for example, and learn from the people that are in there. Ask the questions, you know. It doesn't matter if your questions are stupid. It really doesn't. You know, what's stupid to somebody else may be just lack of information to you. But ask the questions, and when you get the answers, apply them and try something. I mean, many times in my earlier works, I would just apply one lesson that I had, just the one lesson that I got from somebody. Somebody give me one tip, maybe I got 20 or 30 tips, but I just applied the one tip, and if that one tip worked, then that was great, because that stuck with me. Now the other 20 tips I could use the next time, and learn from one tip at a time. That's why I took 25 or 23 portraits first, so I could just learn that one little thing and just keep applying that one little thing. I mean, my works are generally 800 by 600 or thereabouts. I've done something close to this size before, but the ideal thing is to actually learn from these people who are around you.
Wow.
So
Wow, great.
this is my little studio, come gallery if you like. The latest works are not really here. The latest works are with Cho & Co Gallery in Teho, which is here in Hanoi. Cho & Co Gallery have done me the huge honour of being able to display my work with them. They've been in a situation whereby they allowed me to, or Cho allowed me to run a solo exhibition for 2 weeks, for a week, which was great. And I have to be very pleased with the association with Cho & Co Gallery. Done a great job for me insofar as I'm concerned, and I'm sure they will for others as well. So above my head here is social atrophy. Like I said, that's now been sold, just waiting for final payment of the millions that I'm getting from it. Ha ha ha.
Congratulations.
Here is one which I kind of like. That was quite a motive piece for me. It's called Waiting for It to End, which if you saw it in real life, you'd understand. Is it waiting for the rain to end, or is it a case of waiting for his life to end? And over the far side here is a thing called a piece called Aged. And Aged was a special project where I wanted to push the limits of the B2 pencil. One of the things that we find as graphite people is that there's a lot of graphite shine when you go for the deeper, darker colours. And graphite shine I don't like, so I wanted to take maximum darkness of B2, that's the softer grade that I wanted to use, and I did pretty well that whole piece in B2 to find out how far I could push it and not get any reflection. So I did that exercise and I decided, no, I won't even use B2 anymore. So now my pencils range from, in the graphite works, range from H4 through to B1, to B, that's it. I don't use B2, I don't use anything harder. So from there, if I want darker works, then I work with a double E, which is a different grade from Staedtler Mars, a very black pencil, which is good for various tones that fill in the rank between the B and say the B14, B12 or B14 or 14B, sorry, other way around, and also the Pierre Noir and the charcoal. And I can get those grades, those darker grades, with without getting a lot of reflection on my work, which I'm really pleased with. Reflection I just don't like. So I got a couple of smaller ones over here. But like I said, my main works at the moment are in the gallery in Teho.
Yeah, wow, that's well, congratulations on the exhibition. I read about it online, and it's also in the article. I learned that you also very generously, you know, giving free lessons to the young people, to the young artists in Hanoi.
Yes, the quite a passion is to let me try that again. Yeah, in Vietnam, black and white work isn't really overly considered, if you like. People here like their artwork to be full of colour, vibrancy, and quite large. I understand that because I think that majority of people use art like that as a form of furniture, and I can understand that. But for me, and I'm not being deprecating against coloured artists in any way. I'm just saying that a lot of people actually feel that way. They want to have something bright and colourful in their homes to brighten it up, and that's fine and that's fair enough. So for the exhibition, it was quite an interesting situation where I got a lot of people come and have a look at the work, and lots of positive comments about the skill and how great it is from that point of view and so forth. But that was about the limits of what I got, and that's fair enough.
Yeah.
But what I do know is that here in Vietnam there is a movement of younger people who are moving away from the traditional art scene insofar as they're not doing impressionism here. These younger people, they've found realism and are starting to take on realism. Now, there's
Yeah.
very few people who would provide training in that area. So these young people, I'm sure there are some, but these young people are actually looking on the net, they're looking at YouTube, they're looking at Facebook, and they're finding all these people who do realism and they're following them. And they're working at their art, and their art is realism. And they, from my point of view, they are the future of art and great art here in Vietnam. Worldwide, Vietnam art is known for the peculiarities that are popular within that field, such as lacquer work is quite famous, and some of the way that the earlier 30s and 40s artists work is quite important. But the future here for me, to see these young people working in realism is quite a joy. I have students. I work with an organisation here called Blue Dragon Children's Foundation, who are committed to helping street kids. I do free lessons with them, which was a great experience. I have people, teenage people come here and learn to draw here, and I've got one at the moment who's very, very good, and great. It brings me a lot of satisfaction and enjoyment to do that. So. And I enjoy just being able to pass that on. Mind you, again, I'm not a master. I'm just somebody who knows some basic skills, and I take my skills and give them to those. And as a result of that, we're seeing some quite effective work being done.
Yeah, I find it's very generous from your side. And what amazes me, I mean, in particular in this interview or with you, is that, you know, you just started 6 years ago. You pick up the pencil, and then you have this, well, you have your passion, you have your very strict, diligent methodological way. Imagine join, you know, work on the art every day, 5-6 hours. That's huge amount. But look at the result. It's just amazing. And I think it just confirms, you know, what we usually say, art is really for everyone. We can all, you know, appreciate art or creating something as long as you want to devote yourself into that, or even just look at that. And I think that's the most great experience. And in your side, there's all about sharing, right? Like you said, when you have questions, you look on the internet, on Facebook to get those tips, and then you pass this on. So it's really like art is reviving a community physically, virtually, and that's really great. I mean, there are so many art movements. Everyone have their personal taste. I can understand, as you said, maybe people some of them may want to have less, you know, a black white drawings in their home for decoration purposes, but they're echo somewhere. And I'm sure when everyone sees social atrocity, that makes something, and that's how you leave your footprint and you communicate with the world. And that's really great. And that's why highly appreciating you. To be honest, it's like a model that you keep continuing with all the passions. And I look forward to, you know, to the end, to the completion of 9 for the, I'm very curious what will be the other 3 positions that you're going to join. And you know, I'm very curious, and there's a long journey for you. So, you know, that's definitely something I will be watching for. So, yeah, thank you so much, Barry, for spending time, for your sharing, and for all you have done for the community. It's really fantastic. It's really fantastic. You know, they encouraging the young people and everyone. Yeah.
Thank you for inviting me. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you for all those who have actually come and had a look at my humble little story. Great pleasure for me is to have so many people that are interested in my work. So thank you to everybody who supports me, and I hope I can get that continued and hope I can serve something up that's worthy of the attention that it's getting. Thanks again.
Thank you a lot, Barry. Good luck, and I'll see you soon. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.